Hello, I'm Jason Santos. This is my show, Outside the Box. I'm with an amazing lady who's just come into my studio now. We're going to have a chat. She is an assistant nurse in Devon, in a hospital in Devon. And I've just done the show with Dr. Mohammed Adil, who's been suspended for telling the truth about the figures for COVID and the empty hospitals and everything and the massive overreach. I've said it's like murder, really, because they've killed so many people by the false figures. And but anyway, listen, thanks for having a chat with me.
Oh, thank you.
It's fantastic. So you were just telling me now about, and this is an actual assistant nurse in the hospitals. We've just been chatting about the terrible things that have been going on there, and the empty beds, and no one's talking about it. Give me a few experiences of what you've had over this huge, massive overreach and fallacy. This killed so many people because they can't get into hospitals, can they? To have kidney things done, cancer, heart attacks. What's what you've been hearing?
Okay, so in our hospital, I work in one of the major hospitals in Devon. Lots of wards got shut down. So, for instance, the kidney ward got shut down. So all the staff on the kidney ward still worked, and they got deployed to other areas of the hospital. And these wards that were empty were meant for this onslaught of this disease, COVID, to come in, and they were meant to host all these COVID patients.
So they literally kicked a lot of ill people out of the hospitals, is that right?
Yeah, so they stopped people, for instance, that ward is a surgical ward, so people with kidney problems would come onto that ward and get whatever they needed done. So now that ward's empty, so the patients who have kidney problems are at home. They're not coming into hospital for treatment. So these wards have been empty since about February time. This particular ward's still empty. A lot of the hospital was like a ghost town, and they had selected wards. There was a couple filled up with COVID patients. I myself worked in one of the wards of COVID, and the nurses confirmed on there with me that the only people that actually died with COVID, not of COVID, were patients who already had a heart disease or they had problems breathing, so they already had something going on for them, and they died of that thing that was wrong with them, i.e. heart, and they put COVID
Put COVID on the death certificate?
Yeah.
Wow, because that's Scott, there's a senator in the US, a Scott, his name is, Scott something, and he actually got sent a letter to actually ask him to do that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what they were doing. None of them died. Anyone who died of COVID never died. No one died in our hospital of actual COVID. They died because COVID, I think, that's my belief, lowered their immune system, so whatever else is going on actually killed them off in the end.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
And the figures, Dr. Adil was saying on the show last night, he's been suspended because of it, and the figures are just astronomically not true, you know?
Yeah.
And is there a buzz around the this is what I want to ask you. Surely in that hospital, there's all these empty beds, there's people dying outside of heart attacks and all these things. Surely all the nurses and doctors are saying, what the hell's going on here? Is this a big lie?
No.
Is it the unspoken truth almost?
I don't know whether other people don't speak about it, but I think a lot of people I work with, no disrespect, actually buy into the whole newspaper spill.
They watch BBC every 6 o'clock.
Yeah, they believe the mainstream. So I hear a lot of nurses say, I can't wait for the vaccination to come out.
I
understand they're going, oh my God, just like, I can't believe you actually believe this. But a lot of them do actually believe that.
Yeah.
I walk past, we're meant to wear a mask from the minute we get into work, into the hospital doors, we have to wear a mask until we walk out at the end of the day after a shift. And nurses, I work with another nurse, I get breathing problems from wearing a mask. She's getting heart problems from wearing a mask.
And you didn't have breathing problems before, it's just giving you breathing problems.
It's giving me breathing problems.
My God.
Another friend of mine who also does the same job as me is getting headaches, which I believe is part of the carbon dioxide problem that they collect in the mask. The other nurse has been checked out. She's had ECGs. They're seeing if she's having heart trouble due to wearing the mask.
She never has heart problems before this?
No, she never had heart
problems. Oh my God,
before.
this is going to be I think this is going to be endemic. I think this is going to be almost like another whole wave of illnesses that we'll see now
Yeah.
because of this.
Yeah, I think so. I think that I believe that, I felt it, she's felt it, someone else is getting headaches, and I actually burnt one of these masks and they melted. I don't know what they're made of, but they're
Right.
kind of made of some sort of plastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what happens now if I've suddenly got a blockage in my... I feel like I've got a blockage in my colon, I'm bleeding, I need to have an endoscopy, because my guest last night was a colon surgeon. What happens then? I mean, is it like, well, no, sorry, you can't come in yet? What happens?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I can't tell you that for fact. I
But
know
they-
that everyone who's coming into emergency department at the minute is getting COVID swabbed.
Right.
I do know that one lady that came in, she needed operation on her shoulder because she couldn't move her arm and she was in a lot of pain, and she came up to the ward where I work on and she was sent home, and they said, we can't do this operation on you until this is over.
Right.
So
She's
I know-
busy in pain. She's having tranquilizers and painkillers.
Yeah.
My God alive. So, and apparently I spoke to the doctor last night on the show, and he was saying that the person who actually invented this test, I forgot what it's called, per PCR test or something like that, whatever it is,
Right, yeah.
actually said this should not be used as a definite thing to find a virus, right?
Yeah.
No virus has been identified. I've
Yeah,
had
yeah.
Dr. Andrew Kaufman's on my show, been on my show. He said there's no virus has been isolated at all for this. People have even sent things to the authorities and they can't send them back an answer. So what the hell's going on?
Oh, there is another thing that I just remembered. Last week, I was looking through our emails. We get a kind of staff email come through, and they recommended that the staff log on and download this app. And with this app, anyone in the country can download this app. If you get any of the symptoms that they think are COVID symptoms, i.e. if you get sickness, diarrhea, heat, a fever, any of those symptoms, and they're even calling it a rash nowadays, then what you do is you download on the app that you've got these symptoms, and the person, whoever it is at the other end running the show, are saying that's COVID, that person's got COVID. So
Whatever it is.
whatever it is. So you could eat
So there's another bloody number, excuse my language,
Yeah.
another number to prove the numbers that they falsely have done.
Yeah,
Like
so
what?
they'll say that's the second wave. Look, there's like 10,000 people with COVID, and half of them have just eaten a dodgy curry the night before and
Yeah.
got sickness, diarrhea,
Yeah.
normal stuff.
Yeah,
Or got it in the playground, or
Yeah.
normal stuff.
yeah.
Or they've got a cold, or they've got a bit of a fever because their body's just doing that, not COVID. And then I think it's part of the pushing for the second wave.
The second
And
wave, then-
then whatever comes
Vaccinations,
after that, and then
yeah.
vaccinations,
Yeah.
and then passports,
Yeah.
and all the rest of it.
Because I mean, people are saying, "Oh, well, they're not going to make the vaccinations mandatory." Well, they won't have to. They'll just say you don't have to have it. But if you don't have it, you want to get a job, you won't
Yep.
be able to go to work, will you?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Have they threatened you with vaccinations yet?
Not yet.
Right. Okay. So you can't go to work. You can't get a job. You can't go do your banking. You can't get food in a shop.
Yep.
And another wave, another lockdown, that'll be enough, won't it, for
Yeah.
people? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they do want you, the NHS do want you, part of your working there is that you have vaccinations.
Yeah.
And at the minute, it is, the flu, you don't have to have that vaccination. So it's only 20% of the whole staff in our hospital who haven't had that vaccinations. So I don't know who else, I'm one of them. There's another 20%. But this app as well, I was talking to my friend about this app, and she also said, say that you get sickness, you're vomiting one morning, and then the next morning you've got diarrhea and vomiting, and you text these people and say, through the app, look, I've got vomiting and diarrhea. How do they put those numbers down? Does that mean you come up as a different number, as a different person, because that's a different day you're logging something different on?
Well, they lose them both, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could log on, and then you're down as two separate people.
Yeah.
You could have a cold the next week, and they go, "Oh, great! We love Mr. Jones because he's COVID 1, 2, and 3."
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're an assistant nurse. You're in there.
Yeah.
And let's just make it clear to the listeners, this isn't just some random lady that I know just talking here. Go on, say something. No, this is a real nurse, right? Now, In your opinion,
Yep.
you've been watching, you've been looking.
Yep.
You're like Dr. Adil. I made a bit of a joke with him last night. When he's doing a cancer operation, he's looking for the cancers. He's looking for the problems, and that's what he's doing. He's looking at these numbers, and something's really stinks to high heaven about this, right? In your honest opinion, and no one knows your identity.
Yep.
How bad is this, as far as bullshit's concerned?
Well, in Devon itself, there are minor hospitals, but the three major hospitals, okay, so you've got Plymouth, which is a big city, Exeter, which is a big city, and Torbay, at the minute, have 0 patients with COVID in them.
You hear that, everybody? 0 patients with COVID in them. We've still got a lockdown. There's still people suffering. There's people starving to death in India and Africa. People dying all over the world of depression, and you can't even go and see your family if they're dying. It's very suspicious, in my opinion.
It's outrageous. We're being sold something, and people go, and even the nurses are just they just buy into the mainstream. Most of them, unfortunately.
And you don't strike me as this conspiracy theorist nutcase. For me, what I can see, and I've been talking about this for years. Other people that I've spoken to on my show, it looks like it's just going more towards this Orwellian 1984 Brave New World scenario where it's total surveillance, total control of humanity, cashless, microchip in your arm, like Aaron Russo said years ago. Nick Rockefeller told him, we're going to microchip everybody, Aaron. That's what he said to him. And Aaron Russo knew, and he spoke about that when he was dying. Do you see that playing out now with another lockdown and people rolling their sleeves up for a vaccination with microchips in them and stuff?
I see control. I see I do believe what you're saying, and I also see control, especially with that new. I don't really read the news, to be quite honest, but that I did see that one with Boris Johnson saying now it's a £3,200 fine if you're not wearing a mask. You know, just that, and you just go, that's control. That's tyranny in the making. That's kind of like, okay, there's people out there who are not obeying what I've said. And he even said, I've got my son here, do you remember that? I'm not going to say your name, but do you remember that when he turned around in one of the news clips ages ago, right at the beginning of the COVID, when they used to come out on their podium with the wings, with the Union Jack wings, and he turned around and said, people must obey me.
Must obey me,
Obey me, and I remember those words, and we were like, whoa.
Because the thing is, listen, I'm glad I don't know your name, because I would have blurted it out then by accident, but the thing is, I'm delighted to be on the planet now, because I've been banging on about this for years.
Yeah.
We've become used to our slavery.
Yeah.
It's become normal.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, everything's fine, we're really free. No, we're not. It's slavery.
Yeah.
And people are really in pain, and this lockdown's given people a chance. Have you seen that in people where people are suddenly thinking, I'm reflecting on my life. I don't want to do this anymore, and I've just been paid enough to pay my bills and everything like that. It's crazy what's going on, But more and more people are definitely looking at what's going on now in the numbers, and that's why they're closing everyone down off the internet,
Yeah.
How many nurses that you know and doctors that you know have got that look in their eye like something's up here?
Not many, but I did walk past one guy the other night who was also does the same job as me. I was walking down the hospital corridor. We're meant to wear these masks, and the corridor was empty, so I dip the mask whenever it's empty.
Yeah.
And I saw this other guy, same uniform as me, coming up towards me. He didn't have a mask on even. We just looked at each other and just gave the biggest grin. I was like, oh, I'm really glad that there is someone else that's just not obeying.
Yeah.
Obey.
And I suppose if there's not one person with COVID, whatever COVID is, then I suppose it's like, well, there's nobody because we got you all wearing masks, and that's what's doing it.
Yeah.
And then when we vaccinate everybody, that's going to be the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
How many people do you think will take this vaccination, even if people say, do you know what, we don't care, we're not having it? There's a lot of people now,
And I don't know. I mean, I do know in the hospital, like I said, it's with the flu vaccine, which you don't have to have. It's not mandatory. It's 80% have, 20% haven't.
Okay.
But that's a medical profession. Do you get what I mean? Just
as a person who's in the nursing realm, what do you? Because I had a hunch in the beginning. I thought, a lot of people have had the free flu vaccination every year. My dad, a lot of members of my family. I've tried to tell them not to, but of course they do. Surely that will show up as COVID, because that's like a COVID type of strain, isn't it? That they
Yeah.
inject into you. Would that show up in a COVID test? Surely.
I don't know.
Right,
I don't know. I mean, that's one of the symptoms, isn't
Yeah.
it? If you think that, just like, I remember someone was saying about when baby is not vaccinated, but when I've got my son here, by
Did
the
you
way,
hear that?
for
The
everyone
son
else.
is not vaccinated. For the
My
record.
child's not vaccinated.
That's why he looks so bright and cheery. Yeah.
And I tell you what, in his class,
Yeah.
you and your best friend, who's also not vaccinated, are the healthiest, have the least amount of time off for sickness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, tell me about what have you heard about nursing homes and things like that? There's been some atrocities, hasn't there?
Yeah, I haven't heard.
You don't know
anything.
much about that. Okay.
Yeah.
And in the hospital, I know it's like I'm pumping you for information here, but what's been what have you seen in there going on with people? Like you said, mentioned earlier on about some person you saw, a lady or something like that.
There was a woman. I worked with her. I worked in a ward that had 6 beds.
Yeah.
And the beds are fairly close together, and it turns out that she had COVID. So they shut down the ward for 2 weeks, which meant everyone had to have a bedpan or a commode. There was no toilet in the
So
actual
they weren't
ward.
allowed out of the ward.
They weren't allowed out for a shower or the
What?
toilet. Or
So they were in prison, basically.
they weren't allowed out. And the thing is, they were imprisoned in this ward. They said, oh, it's shut down. They call it infection control. So they shut down that ward because of this woman who had COVID. I worked closely. I was much more close to her all day long for 12 hours. And so they shut that door saying, this is infection control. But I and anyone else working with her went on a different ward the next day, and then a different ward, and a different ward.
And they didn't say anything about that.
They didn't say, like, you've worked closest to her, so you should
You've
therefore
been cleaning
be,
her poo up, her wee,
Yeah.
her sick.
giving her personal care. And I was actually doing some breathing exercises with her, sitting down with her because she was petrified. She was off the ceiling with anxiety. So I was sitting there with her, just kind of calming her down, just talking to her. And so then after that day, I was allowed to go and work on 4 different wards. And I was sent to a different ward the next day, and then you get sent places you don't get asked, but then I was sent on and on. So even though apparently they could be infectious and they close the door, it's like I'm above that. I don't ever get infection.
God alive. From what we were told, there'd be millions of coffins lining up coming out of these hospitals. They terrified people.
Yeah. I mean, the ward, they did actually have allocated COVID wards, and like I said, there was only like 3 of them had COVID patients in compared to the numbers put aside that weren't there. And in the wards, this woman I did work with went down to the COVID ward, and I saw her like 2 months later. I worked in the COVID ward. I went down there, and I thought it was atrocious. They was also stuck in bays, and she looked, can I swear?
Fucking swear, yeah.
She looked fucked. She looked really fucked compared to when I saw her. And she said, they won't let me out. I said, what do you mean they won't let you out? And she said, they're keeping me here because she had carers at home. She was disabled. She had carers at home, and the carers who were coming round her house twice a day, whatever, did turn around and they said, we're not coming round to the home to give personal care to this woman unless she's had a COVID swab to prove that she hasn't got it anymore. And the hospital wouldn't give it to her.
Jesus. And I want to ask you, I'm glad I remembered, you might not know about this, but those all, not Lockheed Martin, or one of those big companies started making bloody breathing apparatus. What were they called? What they call those machines? I've completely forgotten what it is.
The ventilators.
Ventilators, that's it. Ventilators were going to be sticking, and there was a company, they were offering $39,000 into the American hospitals if they put someone on a ventilator. There was people going in there having their lungs blown up because they were putting on ventilators when they shouldn't have been, right?
Yeah.
But I wondered, did you know anything about ventilators in that hospital? Did they have them anywhere that you saw and they were sticking people on them or not?
Not where I work normally. But I do know that going back to that COVID ward, I was chatting to the nurses when I was on there, and that I said, like, how's it been on here? How have you been? What's the patients like? How many people have died? I'm a bit grim, but I just said, how many people have died? And have they all died of COVID? And they said some people have recovered, gone home, but the people that have died have not died of COVID. They've died with COVID. So they died of a heart disease because their heart was something wrong with their heart, because their heart, so that the COVID just brought it on, a bit like having flu, and it knocks down your immune system, and that's the thing that kills you when you've got AIDS. It's that kind of thing. So these people died of what was already wrong with them. So all the people that had died already had a pre-existing disease or illness or something that was like really weak immune system, and it was just the final straw. But they did not die of the COVID. They died of the whatever the pre-existing thing they had.
So they're still not talking about lifting the restrictions in the hospitals?
No.
Even though there's no COVID, right?
There's no COVID, and since there's no COVID, before we used to wear masks just on our ward and then take the mask off so if we were walking around the hospital. And then since we've got no numbers in the hospital, we're made to wear masks the whole time from the minute we walk in the hospital door.
So what's going on in your opinion? All these people wearing masks around you, they're terrified. I can see they're shitting themselves, yeah? And there's nothing out there, right? There's nothing out there to catch by this, before I can gather, yeah? So where do you think it's going? What do you think's happening?
I don't know, but I do know that I was in the recycling centre the other day, and there was a one-way system around the recycling centre.
I got thrown out, by the way. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
And in the recycling centre, I was in the book section, and there was one middle shelf right in the middle, and there was a one-way system. You had to walk round this shelf to the books, and I was standing near the end of the one-way system, which was only like 8 foot. And this woman come along with her mask on, and she said, "Excuse me, can you mind out my way?" And there was no one actually behind her, and it was only
because you didn't have a mask on.
Because I didn't have a mask on. She said, "Excuse me, can you mind out my way?" And I went, and I just took one step back, like thinking it was the normal way out. And she went, "No, I want you to move 2 meters."
Right.
And so. I did move 2 meters, but I was just like looking at her. She could have walked back. I mean, it was literally the length of your desk. She could have walked back round. There was no one round the other side, but she was. And I just thought, Jesus.
And here's the other thing I want to say: if someone's got a mask on, right, and they believe that the masks are protecting them, I mean, this is It's like they believe the masks are protecting them. Why would they be frightened of someone without a mask on if they're protected? It's insanity. You know, a lady my wife knows went to see her family in London, and for Christmas she drove all the way up there. She knocked the door. They said, "Oh, have you got him vaccinated yet, your son?" She said, "No." She said, "Sorry." Her family said, "Sorry, you can't come in. We're not letting you in."
Wow.
She drove back down from here, from London. Now, my question is this: if their family's vaccinated, and they believe the vaccine works, which they obviously do, presumably, well, why would they be frightened of someone without a vaccination?
I know. He had the same when he was a baby. We went into hospital. I can't remember what went on for you, but he went into hospital overnight, and they put us in a side room. They put us in an isolated room because he wasn't vaccinated. So you just go, hang on a minute, if you've got a vaccination and this thing is like super protecting you from everything that's out there, this contagious disease that my son has in hospital, then why is it not protecting you now?
David Icke puts it very well. I'm speaking with David Icke's son in Birmingham tomorrow, Gareth, and Piers Coben and some other sort of warriors, really. And David Icke put it very well. He's been banned from everywhere now, and he said it's the totalitarian tiptoe. And he said what they're doing this time is, with the masks and everything, they're choking you until you give in, and then they're letting you free, right? And then another lockdown, they'll choke you, and then they'll let you free. But every time they let you free, your liberties and your freedoms have been that little bit more taken away each time. And my wife knows a lady from Italy who she was speaking to just yesterday. By the way, what's the date today, so we can just make a recording of this? 14th of August today, by the way. So the lady from Italy, she's speaking to people in Italy today. In Italy now, if your children are in school and a couple of them have got COVID, right, guess what? They don't let the kids back home. They take them somewhere, in inverted commas.
Oh my God.
Right? And quarantine them. Now you think of that. And their parents can't even go and see them. This is getting crazier and crazier. And I'm warning everyone right here, and I'm telling people this. I'm freaking out because it's like I can see where this is going.
I can see where it's going. It scares the shit out of me. Where I can see this going. This is just like, this is beyond, and I'm scared that people can't see it. That's what terrifies me.
And the fear of death is a huge fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the fear of criticism from family and friends and other people on the street, you know. I'm very worried about it. I was in a shop the other day, and over the loudspeaker it kept saying, the government has advised people to only use their cards for payment or tapping, you know, whatever it's called, right? Advised people. And I went to the desk and I thought, I don't want to use my card here today. Do you know why? Because if I use my card here today and someone's got COVID in here, in 2 weeks' time they're going to round me up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So hang on a minute. Sorry, right? So I said to the lady at the cash, I said, I've heard him on the loudspeaker. I had heard it. I said, I've heard that it's not illegal to use cash anywhere. So will you take cash? She said, oh yes, you know. It's like, well, why didn't he say that over the loudspeaker?
But I can take cash anyway.
But why? Because they're using this. Oh my God, you touch cash, you're going to get COVID, right? They're using this to bring in cashless, and then they'll bring the microchip in next, and you won't even be able to go to your bank.
I know.
This is terrifying.
I know, it is terrifying. I had that in Lidl's actually. They play the same tape over and over again. Now wash your hands. Now wash your hands. And like Lidl's I went in doesn't even have a sink. It's just like, I'm not going to wash my hands then. You know.
And that stuff you put on your hands, when my father was dying in hospital, he was dying lots of times in hospital, God, but I used to have to use that stuff, you know. Please use that stuff, you know, blah, blah, and there wasn't even COVID on. I've heard how bad that stuff is for you, you know. It's supposed to be really bad, goes straight into your bloodstream and does you terrible damage, you know.
I don't use that stuff.
There's someone in the hospital that doesn't use that stuff. Someone works in the hospital. My gosh. Now, anything you want to say before we close? Anything else about hospitals and what's going on and blah blah blah?
Not about the hospitals, apart from we've got 0 patients. We've had 0 patients for quite some time with COVID, and the same with the other 3. I don't know about the other small ones.
Okay, that's brilliant. Listen, thank you so much for speaking to me today.
You're welcome.
You're amazing, and it's like a breath of fresh air speaking to someone like you that actually is speaking about the truth. But if you're a doctor, they'd now ban you.
Yeah. I've been trying to speak this on my Facebook for ages, but people just think I'm bonkers. It's empty. The hospital's empty.
Hospital's empty. Ladies and gentlemen, the hospitals are empty. You've heard it here with me, Jason Irsat on Outside the Box. I'm almost speechless, but I knew it was happening. But here's a nurse saying the hospitals are empty and there's no COVID. But keep your masks on and get your sleeves rolled up, ready for your vaccination. Good luck with that one. Please support me on Patreon, jasoneosatis.com, and I'll see you on the next show. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.